impacting an entire realm because
Right.
it's built around that whole concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think so. Let's just say let's go down the path and say, okay, well, we're thinking of not having light and dark be so powerful, and then in return we give evil a volley class, and then they can actually fight back in in those situations. Um, then it would be okay. Well, what could we do with the light and dark spells and the kind of spell effects? What is an alternative benefit or bonus or some kind of cool statistic that is affected by light and dark to you? What would you suggest?
Well, I mean, light and dark, I mean, as they were, affected every skill, right? So every skill you had, percept, weapons, everything, like, was negatively impacted by light and dark. So, I mean, again, that was just, you're coming from someone like that's all I knew, right? That's all I know. So
Right.
anything different is weird, right? Because that's all you're used to. So you'd have to toy with the idea. As far as like, because there were situations like right where I don't know, Polo actually, or Cruz might know this, might remember this a little more fondly than I do, but there were items like because there wasn't just light and dark like spells. There were light and dark room modifiers too. There was things. I had an item that would change an entire light level in a room because it one person with dark wouldn't change a room from bright to like dim. That was impossible. You needed like 4 people to do that. So there were 2 separate like abilities for light and dark. One was the actual like circle like of darkness spell, and then one was like like a shroud of darkness spell. And I actually had an item. It was like a blue like flawless diamond that when it was cut would modify the room by 1 full level and stack with the dark spell. But there were items in the game that Good was taking advantage of for a while. There were like the miners' lanterns that acted as room modifiers, and that was like a pretty big thing that they were taking advantage of for a long time. Rogues would be they would be using one-handed crush weapons in their main hand. They would use the lanterns in their left hand, and just with and as a room modifier, and the room would never change. They would stay bright all the time. Or they would just run into the room and like drop the lanterns on the floor, and like it would change the room, like things like that. Like, so those are I'm thinking maybe those are things that you could do. Like you could just add more items into the game that could like you could take advantage of to like throw into a room, like drop it in a room and change the light level or something like that. Like, yeah, one item would change it by the whole level separately from the normal light levels in a room. I remember that. Yeah, that's Crows. So my item in particular was a quest item from Underground Temple in Evil. Very few people had that item. I think Inferno Dragon had one. I had one. Flair had one. Maybe 2 or 3 other people. Akin had one. It was a no drop item that if you in its normal form would give you elements to protect spell, but you can cut it, which is an action while you're holding it, and it would literally change, like modify the room by 1 full level, and it was really, really powerful. And there were other items in the game that could do that if they were held and things like that. So you can build strategies around it, but again, I just can't think of a way to really balance it, and you might not ever be able to, because again, it would be moot if like you launch a game and like we have a total of 50 players and 26 of them are in Evil, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
that's
then
another
that
thing
point,
to keep in mind, So keep it balanced, guys. Come on.
because I mean, no offense, but I mean, Evil. I feel like I'm just gonna go right back to Evil. I have a feeling that's just where I'm gonna end up. And I think a lot of people are on the same kind of like feeling. I don't know about where your feelings lie. I know you have most of your fondest memories are probably on Dirk with your troll, right? So
Yeah, I mean, he was the special one because a lot of my accounts got hacked, and I shared accounts with friends here and there, so I didn't really have my career character until basically Dirk, and so it's they're fond memories, but it's also they're kind of like easy memories because I didn't have to work as hard with that character. Whereas the other characters in the old days, like Sasquatch and Komodo, were
I remember Sasquatch.
well, yeah. So that was one of my I think my first trolls of all of them, and I trusted the wrong person with it, and so forth. But
Yeah, I don't remember Komodo though, but I do remember Sasquatch.
yeah, so like he was played by another person that probably is a little more famous than I was, for what he did. But so I lost that account, and I think I've like recovered some other account that somebody else owned, and I somehow was secretly playing it, and then I lost that account. I had Magnanimous the troll, and then I also had a troll. I had a troll named Smish for a little while, but really just kind of an unknown character, and then.
Magnanimous. That Magnanimous rings a bell. Smish, no, doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah. So I had quite a few trolls, and despite so many other classes in my realm, Chaos, that were way better, but yeah, like the difference is that in the early days it was more difficult. Stats were pretty much worse, and the knowledge of the game was way less, so it felt like you were really it was a challenge. And then when I had Dirk, I was like, okay, I'll make a legit account. I don't even remember which account or how that account was safe or not, but it lasted the longest, and I was able to level consistently and all the way up to like I think only 62 or 63 because of the shutdown. But yeah, and I had all the gear I wanted, and I actually had more characters than I cared to have because I acquired old accounts on top of that. So I was kind of sitting pretty, but it was a little too easy. So I probably don't appreciate that as much as I do the earlier characters. But yeah.
I mean, that depends, because I can tell you right now, a lot of the earlier characters had some of the most busted gear in the game by far. Really, if you go back to the original part of DFC, yeah, it was harder to level, the game was new, and things like that, but like, there was like really busted shit in that game. Like, Black Keep, for example, had a quest for, it was like the Black Runic Armor, and it was literally a bonded chest piece. It was a cloth chest piece that gave you like Direct 2 or something like that, like things like that, and it was bonded, you can get bonded gear through a quest, like that was really good. And and then like all the bonuses on all the gear, like when ED came out, like Dark Blessings dropped from the Reapers. Dark Blessing was a Bless 2 no drop Pain Protect jewel that dropped almost every time off of Reaper mages, and and Dragon Wing boots were like cloth boots, like they were amazing. They were like 11% agility. Like the gear in the earlier part of the game was consistently way more powerful than near the last 3 years of the game. Like the cracked greatswords. I mean, you've come from Chaos. I don't know if you remember when those things came out, when Saurian Waste opened up. Cracked greatswords were fucking broken. They were the most ridiculous weapon in the game, and kobolds and rogues alike destroyed people with those games. Blades of Ice, when those dropped, people would invade with those things because they were that good. They'd almost never figured dying because Blades of Ice had like a 0-second follow-up, and their damage was outrageous. And like bone amulets in Saurian Wastes from like I forgot what the monster was, like Saurian Priest or whatever like that, where again they were like
the
Bonebreaker gauntlets, Bone Priest, and it was basically like the equivalent of a Dark Blessing. It was like a Bless 2 Pain Protect jewel that later on became like a combat jewel, Manticore crowns in I think Shadow Caverns or Crescent Moon Gorge in Good. That was like Bless 2. Falcon Skulls in Chaos. It was like Thor for Royal City or whatever like that. They were like Bless 3 crowns like that you could just get. You know what I mean? Like, and then Diem, who's aka Vasi, aka Leo, the guy who was going to create Syra, decided that the game was going in a direct like power creep, like the game was like the gear was getting way too good, and players were leveling too fast and people were getting too powerful, and he basically redid everything, like all the lists. Like Rebs could get like Arnox Blessing at like level 34. He extended the list to level 50.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of the lists capped out at like 30 in the 30s.
Right. That was pretty necessary.
Yeah, and then like a lot of the gear got toned back. Like Dragon Wing boots, instead of like 11% agility, were like 7% agility now. You know, and like everything just got like what you considered like agility 2 or strength 2 before would be the equivalent of like agility 1 or strength 1 now. You know what I mean? So really, like it was the older players that kind of got spoiled with the gear and had the best gear, and a lot of their gear kind of like, if they had kept it banked when all that happened and for a little while after, a lot of that stuff kind of was untouched, and they still kind of like kept their powerful shit and were able to like level up with it. And then the creep kind of came back when like Cat Claws came, and those got duped, and like striated staves, and those got duped, and if you remember any of that shit, like, and then like
all kinds of gear.
And then when Cade got, as I mentioned on the Facebook page, Listen to Elysium, Cade did get broken down, and it got distributed through the 3 realms. And when that happened, a lot of areas were introduced, new areas, and a lot of areas were rebuilt. So Evil's area of like Arctic glaciers and frozen wastelands, and that whole area got rebuilt and made into like level 60 plus zones. And we ended up getting like bosses like Ice Queen and King, who dropped like Blestery crowns and shit. You know what I mean? Like the gear bloat came back like later on in the game, near the tail end of the game, and you know, it was getting bad. But then that didn't last too long because the game shut down. So.
Right. Yeah. So, like, do you think, you know, because Elysian felt that Leo's changes, kind of, you know, in her own personal right, you know, it may not be true, but she felt that the changes were part of the reason for shutting down the game. So, is that do you agree with that? Do you think that his proposals at the end?
Which changes in general, like breaking down Cade?
I think it was the Cade bit, for sure. There might have been some other things, but you know, like what would you
as
say?
far as his initial changes, which was actually like toning the gear and extending the spell lists and stuff like that, that I think was probably more necessary than anything else, because in his own, he was right. I mean, people were leveling way too fast. The gear was way too good, for the most part, overall. And you know, like, I don't know, like you would find yourself in situations where like level 30 revs were like killing level 60 players and stuff like that. You know, it didn't change much. You know, I could still kill anyone at like level 50, but like now I couldn't do it at level 30. But his later thing with breaking down Cade, I don't know what the issue was. Like, I think he was looking for something for staff to do, because it depends on how you look at it, right? Like, you want to be creative and you want to create more areas and do more things, but you're limited by server space. And Cade was like, I think it was an easy target because Cade was like firstly, he made it abundantly clear, and a lot of people made it abundantly clear, that Cade Free for All was never going to happen again. He did not want to do Cade Free for All. He wasn't a fan of Cade Free for All. It was subject to too much abuse. It was annoying to handle. Like, it was a lot to monitor. And then on top of that, after it was clear that Cade Free for All was never going to happen, they started putting Cade on rotation. So every like week or every 3 days or whatever it was, like you would need to like disable the boat in Evil, you know, the Cade boat, and then you'd need to make sure everyone was out of Cade, because you couldn't have people in Evil remaining in Cade when Good got Cade, and then you needed to activate the boats and good, and then you'd have to you'd hear about like how some like evil player like Revenant like stayed in Cade past the time and like
Oh
ended
yeah.
up killing someone and like taking their gear, and then you got to go through all that. So that became a hassle. That I guess they just